We'll be
Okay.
good.
All right. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to the Chad and Mel Movie Hour. We are back with another one of Chad's excellent recommendations, the 1950s film noir classic Sunset Boulevard. So we are going to dive into all of the satire, all of the drama, and all of the insanity and all of the truths. I just recently rewatched it for the first time in maybe 2 decades. I've essentially forgotten all about it. Um, my God, like what a roller coaster it was. So yeah, I
And
want
might
to get
I
into
say, a terrific film to watch on the heels of something starring Madonna, because
right.
there's a direct parallel here that we
Yes.
can maybe get on a philosophical kick about later.
Yeah, Gloria Swanson is definitely a diva, and so
Hmm.
it's very fitting.
Yes.
But do you want to
Uh,
tell us a little bit about who made the movie?
sure. So, directed and co-written by Billy Wilder,
Okay.
who did he was one of my favorite things that he did was Double Indemnity from 1944 with Barbara Stanwyck.
I've
Oh
not
my
seen it.
God. So this is one we should maybe do. It's one of my favorite films, and
Okay.
it's another film noir. It's a classic. So he did both of these films, which kind of absolutely blows my mind because these are two of my very favorite films, which I watch repeatedly.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, let me pull up. I'm pulling up his information. So he worked with he did a lot of comedies too before, or I should say after this film, with Marilyn Monroe. So he did like The 7 Year Itch and Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe. So he's done a lot of iconic work, and so he's one of the big directors, like from the 50s and from that period. He was active from 1929 to 1995, it says, but that was like his heyday. Was
Right.
during in the 50s, I would say, his most iconic work. But yeah, this Sunset Boulevard is one of my all-time favorite films. I just think it's like incredibly written, incredibly directed, incredibly acted. I think it gets on like an A plus in every one of those areas. Um, yeah, and I definitely want to talk about the parallels between someone like Madonna these days and Gloria Swanson's character in this film. Yes. So Gloria Swanson, the actress in this film, was an actual like silent film icon in real life.
Mhm.
So, and in this film, she plays like an aging silent film actress. So there's a lot of truth in that. But of course, how she behaves, how this character behaves, is hopefully not at all how she behaved. And to
Right.
our knowledge, not how she really was in real life, with the over the top um, just type of character of living in the past, basically, and totally living in the past and living in a bubble, in terms of thinking you're just the most amazing thing when everything has kind of passed you by.
Yeah.
But William Holden is really great in this. He's a writer who basically is at the end of his rope, right, in the beginning of the film. So the film starts off where like he owes back money on his car, on his apartment. He can't get a writing job. He's like begging his agent for anything. He's going out for whatever he can. He can't find anything. He gets a flat. He pulls into this random house on Sunset Boulevard, and it kicks off this amazing story. Um,
Yes.
which, when he first pulls into her house, and he's just like checking it out because it's this huge estate that like looks abandoned, and then she's like, "You there, you
Yeah.
there, come here," and she thinks, so she, a la Michael Jackson, has this like chimp companion that has now died, and she thinks he's coming to help with the burial
Right.
procession for this chimp companion, and he just walks into this wild world of this woman that I am so fascinated by in this film. Like she's totally like a gay fascination icon, and an icon to anyone, but there's
Right.
definitely a gay icon vibe to
Yes.
this woman, where someone like me just hangs on to like every word, and like, oh, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of mirroring reality in this film. So there's some people that play themselves, which is really cool, who associate with her, who actually directed her as a silent film actress way back, like in the 20s. For
Right.
example, like Cecil B. DeMille, there's the famous line at the end, "I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille," which we all grew up like hearing people quote and being like, what the fuck?
Right.
But like it's from this film, and this what made it so iconic. And I just love those things that become a part of culture that
Yes.
people generations later will always hear, and they haven't even seen the film, but it's just so ubiquitous. And
Yeah.
so let me go through. So it is not funny though, that first film with the chimp, and when he like gets drawn into her world like more and more, and it's just like a spell that she's like casting and then drawing him in. And as soon as she realizes that he's a writer, she's working on this script, and she, has this crush on him and pulls him into her world as this like boy toy, but also as like a companion, but also as like a cohort to kind
Yeah.
of get herself back on the big screen. And
Yeah.
there's this great scene even where they're watching one of her old films because she's obsessed with herself and like how glorious she was. Which actually Madonna isn't quite like that actually, but she is obsessed with like her past, her glorious past, and she says, "I'll be up there again on the screen," and she stands up, and the acting is so great in this movie. And like if it were any other movie, like the acting would be almost over the top, but I'm gonna
Right.
say that it's really not over the top because that's just like her in this movie, and she is from that 20s era of like the drama and the acting was so over the top, and she just is that character, and it's just so
Yeah.
awesome. Norma Desmond is, I haven't mentioned yet, but that's the name of her character in this film,
Yeah.
which is now a historic a part of history. But so then
Icon.
she has this live-in guy, Max von
Love that.
Mayerling, he was actually um Eric von Stroheim. So he was actually a director, actor, and producer as well, like back from the olden days.
So
Um,
crazy.
so it all kind of mirrors like a lot of truth, but like what's interesting is like there's this great line that William Holden has to who plays Joe Gillis in the film. So he says to Norma, there's nothing wrong with, being 40, not unless you act like you're 20 or something like that.
I have that line too. There's nothing
Did you
tragic.
write that down?
Yeah. No, there's nothing tragic about being 50 unless you try to be 25.
Right, exactly. That's the exact line. And
So
one
spot on.
cannot help but think of Madonna because she's stuck in this ever cycling repetition of trying to be like young and popular and relevant and on the radio, which she hasn't been for like a decade. But she like constantly is just trying to be friends with like Katy Perry and Rihanna, and like it's like this world has so passed her by, she just doesn't even know.
She didn't get the
And
memo just quite yet.
no, and all her sycophants and people that surround her will not let any of that truth
Right.
get to her. And in this film, Norma has Max like protecting her and writing her fan mail and like keeping the fire going, like throwing coal in the fire, like
Yeah.
keeping it all going. It's just so crazy and wild. But oh, the photography is like so beautiful, the black and white photography, and there's just so many like dramatic scenes. Like I love when like they start to form this relationship, and he doesn't have anywhere else to stay, and she starts like he becomes like a kept man, and she
Yeah.
starts paying off his debts and saying, let's not be small, let's not worry about money. And she always says like, I'm rich. And like I always repeat that in irony. It's so Jonathan
She
like I always tell Jonathan
continuously
that. I'm like, I'm rich. I'm richer than all this new Hollywood trash.
yeah, it's
Some of
like
the
he's
best lines ever. Like, so good.
and yeah, like their relationship is so interesting. And your point about the acting, like I've heard people refer to Sunset Boulevard as even like a satire in its time. I don't know if that's true. But I mean, maybe you can
No, I
call
don't I don't think it's that over the top. I think we've done films that were way more so. And like if you look at like a film like Mommy Dearest, it's way more camp.
right.
This was more like taken seriously by critics, and she's definitely over the top, but it's not unbelievable that an aging silent film goddess, I mean, because sometimes we forget and we don't realize like how big those silent film stars were. But we've talked about how like stars today have nothing on like Madonna and Michael Jackson from the 80s. Madonna and Michael Jackson almost have nothing on the silent film stars. Like you could go back and blow it up even more, because the world over, those stars like Valentino and Gloria
Glenn,
Swanson and right, some
Juan,
of these other people were like huge, unfathomably huge, the world over in terms of fame and getting fan mail and stuff. And yeah, so and I didn't even quite realize that until like I researched it more. But like Valentino, like that guy was just like a legend, a living legend,
yeah,
even more
it's
so. So it's wild. So she's still caught up in that,
he loves to
and
drop too.
yeah, and I love when he tells her, "Oh, are you gonna make her comeback?" And she goes, "I hate that word. It's a return."
Sure, yes, yes.
I just,
There's
she's so quotable in this movie. Oh my
it's
gosh.
the dialogue in this movie, and like because of the time in which it was made and filmed, like people were still very much talking in that like that particular cadence of the 40s and 50s, like like
Right.
art and all of that. It's very like na 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 na, and it's
Yeah.
so vicious.
She's way more of that diatribe than he is, or the younger people in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Hmm.
I love though even that the movie opens with like his ghost narrating what the events
Yeah.
that led to his murder, and it's just immediately you're drawn in, and even one of the first lines of dialogue is like, I always wanted a pool, but the price for me was a little high, and they show him like dead in the pool. It's just
Yes.
so good. This I
Oh,
love
the
this.
dialogue's incredible. Yeah, his inner monologues and stuff are so well written and so well delivered and acted. Yeah.
And speaking of like her narcissism and her vanity, like I mean, her estate is filled with nothing but portraits of her.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah.
Constantly name dropping people like Rudolph Valentino and how he like
Yes.
told her like you can't have hardwood, you have to have tile 'cause tile is better for tango. It's
Yes.
just amazing. But like even when Gillis is first like entering the estate, what is it, 1086 Sunset Boulevard, and he has no idea what's about to befall him. He talks about how like the state of the mansion reminded him of Great Expectations, and there was definitely like themes of Great Expectations in the movie, in my opinion, too. Just like this rich old, not
Right.
widow, a
Yes.
divorcee who's very eccentric and is for the most part a shut-in. She does leave the house, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like that they called that out in the movie. And to her vanity, another one of the great lines of dialogue is, I think she's talking to Gillis or something, and maybe it was right after she says like, it's not a comeback, it's a return, but she says like, I am big, the pic just got small, like that
Yes. And
everything.
the way she bitches about like how shitty film became after the silent era is there's like she's not wrong about that.
Right.
Maybe at the time, but like it's kind of how we bitch about like how shitty movies are today compared to like
Yes.
70s, 80s, 90s, whatever.
There's always a
50s,
gold there.
50s to 90s, like um but it's so awesome. She's like, in my day we had faces. We didn't need to talk. And
I
she's like,
know.
shitting on all the modern day stars. She's like, none of them can hold a candle to like what we were, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the way like you see the relationship evolve between them or devolve, depending upon how you want to look at it, and how he becomes a kept man, but is like trapped by the whole situation because he can't make money on his own. But one of his former coworkers or cohorts, Betty Schaefer, who's like the girlfriend of one of his friends, is like a screenwriter reader, a
Right.
screenplay reader, sorry. And like she tries, and she's very like much a modern woman and like owns her power, and I love her character. And
Yeah,
she's
she's
trying
great.
like let him know, hey, like some of the shit you've written is actually really good. I want to help you like extrapolate it and turn it into something. And he's like, no, 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 no. Like he's sucked into his new life. And he's attracted to her, but like he doesn't make a move because he's being respectful to his friend. Um, yeah, that, and then of course
Of
Norma finds
course.
out and drama
And of
ensues.
course they end up falling in love later on and
Yeah,
she chooses him over the other guy. Um but yeah, and then you have her Norma Desmond try to kill herself over it, and
yeah.
anything to get his attention. She's just so desperate for his love and his attention, and yeah, she's insatiable is a good word for
Perfect,
it, I think.
perfect adjective. And she and Max, her butler, when I got hit with the plot twist about Max, because she mentions in the movie that she has been married 3 times. She's been
Yeah.
divorced. And Max, her butler, is like to your point, like he's the one writing her fan letters, keeping her
Hmm.
delusions alive, so such that she doesn't try to harm herself again. And we come to find out that A, he's the one like writing the fan letters, and B,
Right.
that he was actually Max divulges this to Gillis in the third act that he was the person that found her and made her a star. He was once a famous
Hmm.
director, Cecil B. DeMille. And so you
Right.
find he's also her third ex-husband. And he's
And he
just
was in real life too, which blows my mind. Like a famous director and everything. Yeah, it's insane.
crazy. But like that this
Yeah.
man loves her so much that he
Right.
like basically her slave and it's
Yeah,
just
he's
making that
totally
she
her
doesn't hurt
servant.
her. Yeah.
He's had all the doorknobs removed so that she can't lock herself away and then kill herself. And he makes sure there's nothing, no knives or razors and things like that. And
Yeah.
um, yeah,
And there's this scene where he's driving her like to Paramount where she mistakenly thinks she's being called back by Cecil B. DeMille to like make her grand return, but really they're just trying to like rent her car for another movie. And she's
right.
none the wiser, and like she's putting on her makeup in the back seat, and Max is like looking at her through the rear view, and he's like, you might want to check the shadow on your left eye or something. Like he's ever like looking out for her. It was
Hmm.
just so
If Madame doesn't mind me saying so, something
cute.
like that.
So good.
And she's like, "Oh, good call." She's like, right. And she looks like fabulous in that scene, and she's stunning in this movie. And she's like wildly beautiful and just like almost statuesque, like her look and the way she acts is just like so. I mean, you could just like eat it up. It's just such a
Yeah.
great, like juicy performance. And then
She's meant to be on camera. That woman is meant to be.
yes, oh my gosh.
And when she gets, or maybe this happened before the studio, but Gillis is starting to like realize that he's trapped and that she's batshit crazy and
Yeah.
completely delusional. And he says, this is one of my favorite lines. He says, it's as if she's proudly waving to a parade that had long since passed her by. It's so tragic.
Madonna.
I don't, but that's all very much. But that's also what reminded me of Straight Jacket was a very
Hmm.
much similar theme is that like a woman of a certain age in Hollywood is no longer
Right.
relevant or wanted. how does she cope with that? To what lengths will she go before it
Yeah.
becomes sad, you know?
And I
And this
think
movie is all about that.
at that time, in that era, I think it was really unspoken to talk about a woman aging or a woman being sexy past a certain age,
Right.
and all those things. And so I find it like fascinating whenever a film meets it head on, especially a film from that era. I mean, it's pretty interesting, and because that was you women were supposed to be, you know, more demure, and not that
Right.
wasn't supposed to be talked about.
Yeah.
But it's just
The movie
really
was
interesting. And
ahead of its time, in my opinion.
oh yeah, and it was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. It
Isn't that
won
insane?
3. It got a lot of positive comments when it first came out. Um, it's gone on to become like Gloria Swanson's character as Norma Desmond is now one of the most famous, iconic characters of all time. Um, the most iconic moment is the very end when she shoots Gillis because he's leaving her. He packs his stuff up and he finally says, at first she tries to kill herself. He's sad. He's shocked and sad about that. He's there for her in the moment, but then afterward, it all falls apart. The whole illusion falls apart for him, and he faces the fact that this is a delusion. This whole reality is just a delusion, and
Mhm.
he's like caught in her web. So that's it. He needs to leave, and he packs his stuff and he gets out, and he's not cruel about it, but he's very matter of fact. Like this is needs to happen. I need to
Right.
leave. And she flips out, gets her gun, and shoots him. He ends up landing in the pool, which she had filled for him. Um, and then when the police come to get her, that is the most iconic scene in the whole film, where she comes down the banister, the staircase, at the end, having totally had a mental break, thinking that she's now in this film that she's been delusional the whole film about. Um, Salam, this film that she was trying to get off the ground, she now thinks she's filming it because all the cameras have arrived, and her servant, caretaker, former husband, former film director Max says, you know, helps the police to see that maybe this is the easiest way to get her out is to just
Right.
indulge her in this moment of her close up, her
Right.
ultimate final close up that she's going to have. And then, of course, it ends with her saying, "I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille," one of the most iconic lines in film history. And
Yeah.
it's so incredible. And I love when a woman gets like a film role that's this great at that age. Like it wasn't
Yes.
how I mean now it's become more common, but then it was so much more rare for an older woman who was so talented to find like something that juicy to like
Yeah.
sink their teeth into, like an acting role like that.
Something worthy
So
of talent. Yeah.
right, because we
Yeah.
talked about how like Joan Crawford in Straight Jacket, it's more of a B film, and
Right.
it's way more tabloidy type of film, and it's way more like her just trying to work, like
Right.
be be a working actor and not so discerning about the type. And even Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, those are
Oh
films
yeah.
where they're just more concerned with being working actresses, and I love those films anyway, but they're not
Right.
the like the Academy Award winning films that this is, where she really get a chance to like be cemented in history with one of the great roles of all time. So it's
Amen.
so cool to see it for that reason. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just love everything. I love every single scene in this film. I love every single piece
So
of dialogue. I
it's so
think it's like
fun.
a perfect film. Yeah.
I would argue that, and I think it's gone down in history as being one of the most perfect films. I mean, there's like scenes, they're just so beautiful. Like to your earlier point about like the cinematography, like there's a scene like
Yeah.
I think right before, this is earlier on, like this is in the first act, but like there's a scene where she's got one of her films playing in her screening room, and she stands up and says something, I forget what, but like she's lit by the projector light, and it's just
Yes.
beautiful. And then later on in the second act, when she goes to Paramount, thinking mistakenly that she's going to be talking to DeMille about her upcoming role,
Yeah.
she's on a movie set, and he's being very kind to her, and just like
Yeah.
placate, trying not to upset her. And she's she's watching this like set, this movie being filmed, and then all of a sudden this guy Hog Eyes, who's a light operator, recognizes her
Yeah.
and shines the spotlight on her down in like the director's chair. And
Such a great
like
moment.
all of a sudden everyone in that studio can literally see her. Before that light hit her, nobody
Right.
realized who she was or that she was there, but as soon as the spotlight hits her,
Right.
everyone like looks to her and they're like, do you know who this is, do you know? And it's like that she has to have the light on her to be seen. I mean, it
Yeah.
blew my
I,
mind. Like,
I'm gonna blow
it
your mind another level with that
really.
scene because there's this great shot right before when she hasn't gotten that full acknowledgement yet, the light hasn't gone on her yet, and she
Mhm.
takes a seat in that chair, that director's chair, waiting to talk to Mr. DeMille, and there's
Mhm.
a shot where she has a feather in her hat, and there's this genius shot where this microphone on a boom comes in the back and like hits her feather and like annoys her for a moment, and that's her, the silent film actress, being annoyed by the advent of sound, which has come into motion picture, and
uh,
is her whole demise. And it's this genius shot that you miss, but it's
I
totally
didn't catch that
intentional.
at all. That's
Oh,
incredible.
it's awesome. It's so great. And it's
God
just
damn.
like her just being annoyed yet again by like a microphone and the
Yeah.
talkies, and like oh, she's so above it. It's so
It's
great.
I gotta go back and rewatch that scene. I mean, and
Yes.
the end of the movie where she's fully deluded, she just killed Gillis. The cops and the press are in her house, and she's sitting at her vanity, putting on her makeup,
Yeah.
getting ready to like, meet the press and start shooting her movie or whatever. And realizing as an audience member that really this is her demise. She's going to prison. It's so heartbreaking when she descends the stairs and she's at her most
Yeah.
beautiful and her most elegant and most,
Yeah.
and you just know that it's not real, and your heart breaks for her. And there's in before she kills Gillis, I think it's when they're having the fight, she delivers another iconic line. She's like, no one ever leaves a star, that's what makes a star. I'm just like, okay,
Yes.
truth.
There's so many. Yeah.
And that also made me think of Madonna too. It's because, all of the yes men around these people, and she says stars are dangerous, aren't they? I mean, it's so good. And
uh,
it takes her having to like ruin herself completely to become a star again,
right.
and that ascension down the staircase. And then she says, like, I can't remember if it's like right before she says, I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Sorry, there's a siren. Or right after, but
We're
she
too
says,
good. They're coming for us.
right, they got to shut down this fire blog. Um, she says those wonderful, like she's thanking everyone,
Hmm.
for her, like
Yeah.
her return. And she says, quote unquote, and also those wonderful people out there in the dark, meaning, the audience members. Like, I love that line.
Yeah, that's a great line. The dialogue is so great. And in that moment, there's someone is there with the media covering her arrest, and it's Hedda Hopper, and it's the real Hedda Hopper playing herself. Now, if you've seen like Feud and like the TV show Feud about Joan Crawford, and Hedda
Oh,
Hopper is
no,
like one of the big characters, and because she's like Miss Publicity around town in Hollywood, and that's the real
that's
Hedda
really her.
Hopper. Yes.
I got to go back and watch some of these scenes. That's amazing.
Yeah. So like that truth right there is just like mind blowing. A
Yeah, this movie is such a good
lot
commentary
of
on.
people play themselves. Buster Keaton, who's a very famous silent film star plays himself as one of the waxworks when they're
Right.
playing their card games and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you could just go through on IMDb or whatever, but there's so many people that play themselves. I think Hedda Hopper was like a big thing for me. I was like, what?
Go back and watch that in the Feather and the Boom Mic. I've got to see that.
Yeah, yeah. So just a
It's such a
genius film.
commentary on like the devouring machine that is Hollywood, especially as it
Right.
relates to women and women over
Yes.
a certain age. And my
Yeah.
God,
And
yeah,
I'm always obsessed with that. I just watched a documentary, I can't remember the name, on Betty Page, but it talked about kind of how her how like just her how interesting her life was, but like um she was not a part of Hollywood, but then
right.
discovered after she became older she had become an icon, and then kind of was pulled back into it a little bit. But it's interesting, Monroe and all these other famous people, how they're kind of like chewed up and spit out by the Hollywood machine, which was like a very masculine entity
Yeah.
at the time, and was like a big money making machine. It was all about money, really. But as most things in
Change.
yeah in capitalism, but it's just all that really fascinates me.
Yeah, I could watch this movie many, many, many more times over. Um,
Yeah,
it's
it's
incredible.
comforting too. Like if you're
Architecture.
familiar with this film, it's one of those things that's just like comforting to put on like a rainy day. And I think Double Indemnity, which we should both watch and do a movie hour on, is
Yeah.
very similar. Double Indemnity and this film are my two favorite film noir films, and they both have like a strong female character that is iconic. But
Love it.
yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, what else is there to say? It's just I don't have anything bad to say about this film, so I'm just here to
there's
praise.
not a single criticism. The dialogue blew me away. The
Yes,
acting, obviously, but like the dialogue,
so well
and
written, and it's so well written and filmed for sure.
yeah, and just the themes of the Hollywood machine and all of that.
Yes. Oh, and
Spot on.
it's it's so great, the shots at the oh, of course I'm forgetting the name of it now, but the shots at the oh, come on, what is the name? Of course it's because I'm trying to talk about it and we're filming it that I can't remember the name of it. But you know how at Universal they have the fake one, and it's the place where all the actors go and have like
Oh, Schwab's
yes,
Pharmacy.
Schwab's drugstore. Yeah, Schwab's
They call it
Pharmacy.
HQ.
The
Yeah.
famous where and there's so many famous Hollywood stories about this. Like I think that Lana Turner was discovered having like a chocolate soda there or whatever, which is
Yeah.
like more myth than reality. But there's so much like just Hollywood magic that has is like a part of that place, which no longer exists now. But
Yeah.
of course, they have the mock up, like the replica of it in Universal Studios, which it's just like a magical idea of a place. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they
Absolutely.
show the real place there, and it's just so cool to think about like people going there. And the character, the young female character who Gillis is um ends up falling in love with, how she's trying to like get her start.
Yeah.
Right, and she's trying to get her start, so she goes there, and all the young like up and coming writers and stuff go there, and
Yeah.
it's just so cool. And like Mulholland Drive is like another one of those like, because I think David Lynch is also fascinated with places that have this like historical magic, like in Hollywood, where all these things have happened that are
Myth.
mysterious and magical and or lead to incredible things, So this film has like a few of those locations in it, which is so cool to see.
Yeah. Schwab. When I saw Schwab's, I was like, heck yeah.
I'm like,
And
I can't believe I can't remember the name of this place now. And it only happens when we're
it's all right.
filming, of course.
It's
But
all right. We're under a lot of pressure here.
yeah,
Yeah.
COVID pressure.
Literal. I have nothing, not a single criticism about this movie. I'm gonna rewatch it. I'm down to do Double Indemnity. Like
Yes,
I was most blown away by the dialogue in this movie and the writing. It's so
definitely. And
luxurious.
it won an Academy Award for screenplay and writing,
Heck yeah, as it should.
which it definitely deserved. It won a Golden Globe for Best Director. It won the
Okay.
Golden Globe for Best Actress for Gloria Swanson, and it won the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Drama, which it of course hands down deserved.
Yes.
As far as Academy Awards, it won Best Story and Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Art Direction and Cinematography, and Best Scoring.
Yeah, I love this.
So not the bigger awards. Like
Right.
I'm surprised, but that's okay.
We'll allow it. I mean, it went down in history, so that's more important. It's iconic.
Definitely.
It stands the test of time.
Of course.
Final thoughts.
It's been one of those that's been inducted as deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and been inducted into the Library of Congress.
Hell yeah.
So it was selected for preservation there. And if you get it on Blu-ray, I mean, it looks incredible. It's amazing to be able to go back, whether, HD streaming or Blu-ray, however you choose to partake, to be able to now see these films in such a high quality from so many decades prior and just relive those moments with those people is so cool. Because I remember...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just like when we were growing up, whenever you would try to track down one of these old films, they always looked like shit, like either on VHS or DVD, because they hadn't really been like properly restored yet. Yeah. And now they've gone back and time has really caught up to that, where we've now scanned all these negatives and stuff, and stuff is coming out. Streaming has gotten so much better in quality, and now you can stream or get on Blu-ray these incredible films. So
I streamed it in HD, and it, like, the black and white is just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. The lighting in black and white movies is already anything, but in this they really use lighting very well and as a storytelling mechanism, and it's just iconic.
One thing we didn't touch on was masculinity in this film, because first of all, the film is really dominated by a central female character, because even though it's narrated and almost from the viewpoint of Gillis's character, she sucks up so much of the scenery around her in any given scene that she's very dominant in that way as a character and an actress in this film, which I love. But he has to wrestle with becoming like a kept man. So there's a scene where they go to, she's like, oh, you need new clothes, you need evening wear, formal wear. And he's like, for what? And like no one else his age has like proper formal wear in Hollywood, but now he's going to get like the full fitted for everything. And there's a great scene where the guy who's like fitting him and, the shop assistant or whatever whispers in his ear, well, as long as the lady's paying, why not go for the nicer fabric? Yeah. And he just shoots in this look like, how dare you? But he also he's also stung in the moment because he realizes there's so much truth in it. Like it's true. So he's offended, but he's also like feeling the truth of it, I think. And I think he's trying to be a man, and but also he's now a kept man. Yeah.
He's definitely grown accustomed to his lifestyle, and he's wrestling with that. But I mean, she's essentially emasculating both of the main male characters in the movie.
Right, both of them, yeah.
Her husband, servant / director, Max. Like they are all belonging to her. They are simply orbiting her.
They're orbiting her ego, and it's just like so big.
As they should.
Madonna. There's a lot of parallels to Madonna, except the main difference is that Madonna, if anything, she's the opposite of like stuck in the past because she never talks about like her past achievements. She doesn't release them out again on DVD or Blu-ray or spend any time like hardly at all celebrating them or discussing them because she's always about like her next project. So in that sense, Madonna is like the opposite because she's very like forward thinking, but she's also this like huge ego of like a female icon star who I think has a total break in cognitive dissonance with like how society and people perceive her and how she thinks she's perceived as like very sexy and powerful, but people are seeing her as being like very uncreative and like weak and like falling back on her old like antics now and stuff. And there's a whole like psychological thing there too, but it's interesting to see this woman also be like in her own bubble. So in that sense, there's this parallel for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Many a parallel, and many a parallel to other aging actresses and aging musicians, female in general. You know, I mean.
Right. Well, and everyone deals with it different.
Yeah.
Right. We were just talking about the oh gosh, now I can't remember her name. The documentary with my God, what is happening?
What movie?
Oh my gosh, hold on, just give me a second. She was in 9 to 5 and the workout videos and
Jane Fonda.
Anti-Vietnam. Yes, Jane Fonda. Thank you. Jane Fonda. What is going on here? Anyway,
a lot of press.
Jane Fonda. So of course Jane Fonda grew, old in the public eye, and I think handled it almost the complete opposite of being like totally ego based and totally. I mean, she's admitted to like having plastic surgery and almost even regretting it and stuff. And that HBO documentary, Jane Fonda in 5 acts, is so incredible and fascinating. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
No, but
that's a must see.
Yeah, it is a must see, and it shows you a different perspective of how to deal with that. So you have, of course, all these different types of people, but I don't know what it is about powerful women that hold gay men so transfixed, but any of these, more so than a powerful man in a film or whatever, and it's always these powerful women that we're so drawn to, maybe identify with more. But people, women that really own their own identity, their own fashion, their own sexuality, their own all that. Yeah. And I think gay men, if they don't do that, they want to do that, a lot of them.
Right.
So maybe that's where we identify and associate.
It's a very beautiful embodiment of sex, power, intelligence, grace. It's like
glamour.
The ultimate encapsulation of all of the things that a fully realized, empowered person would want to be. It's like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100%. So Madonna's definitely been that, and Madonna, I think
Gloria Swanson.
Gloria Swanson is totally that in this film. We like root for her because she's kind of a villain in the film, but it's one of those villains that you love to root for, right?
Yeah. You can't help but empathize with her. I mean, at least I couldn't. Yeah. I found her
to succeed.
And in a way, she does. In her mind, she did, so ignorance is bliss for her, and that's okay. She deserves it.
True. Named.
Any last thoughts on this amazing movie, this iconic Sunset Boulevard?
I think we just about summed it up.
Well, with that, I want to thank you for making me rewatch this. It was such a pleasure. I am down to do Double Indemnity next. And
we got to do more of the great classics, the masterpieces.
We need
to. After the trauma of like Alien vs. Predator and Alien Resurrection, mixed among some really good films in there. It's
We have to course correct very
we have
quickly.
yeah, we have to balance the scale.
Well, we thank you guys for watching. As always, like and subscribe, comment down below. You know the drill. And we're ready for our close-ups now. We will see you on the other side.
See you
And
on the other side.
Brad with yet another iconic alien shirt. Okay, what do you want?
Of course. I had to show it off.
We'll
This is
see you
Gloria Swanson right here in the
equally
film. Norma
equally
Desmond.
Norma Desmond in the flesh. All right,
Yeah.
guys, love you. We will see you next time.